EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to Birds 365, a Monday edition, June 17th here on Birds 365, just 81 days away until Eagles kick off the NFL season, 80 days away until the NFL kicks off their season. Johnny Mac, good Monday to you, sir. How you doing?
Good morning. Yeah, another off-season week, and you know what that means, Zander? We get closer and closer to actual Eagles football, so that's a positive thing. Although I don't want to ruin everybody's summer. Enjoy the summer. Enjoy the summer.
Yeah, I hope
Happy Father's Day to all the fathers.
Yeah, I was going to go there. Happy Father's Day to everybody. I hope everybody had a great weekend. It was great weather out, at least where I was. It was great weather. I hope you got some time to spend some time with your father, or if you are a father, happy Father's Day to you, to the real heroes out there who are the fathers of the world. So we appreciate all of you. Appreciate everybody being here this morning. Looks like we got a good number in the chat already. George and James, Twiz. We appreciate all you guys being here. Make sure you drop a like this morning. Johnny Mac, we will continue, at least for this opening segment, to beat the dead horse of the Nick Sirianni comments. And boy, am I growing tired. But at least we got some developments on it. Jeff McMullen says, now people, and he used the term, several key figures, whatever that means, inside the Eagles organization were unhappy or upset with Jalen Hurts' remarks at his final press conference going into the offseason. Kind of leaves this weird 7-week period here where, you know, there's a lot of unnecessary questions now being asked. And admittedly, it was brought on by quarterback one. So what do you make of the Jeff McMullen report that several key figures inside the Eagles organization are not happy with QB1?
Yeah, it kind of jives with what I've heard from one source, at least. So Jeff had multiple sources saying several key figures. And, you know, how you phrased it is how sort of it was described to me. And the fact that, you know, the disappointment is not understanding the situation, basically, and understanding there's that 6-7 week dead period. And, you know, you can't leave stuff open-ended like that. And it was, you know, from the standpoint of, I think, people in the building, it was, you know, summer break is coming on. Come on, easy. It's a layup. Unforced error is how it was described to me, to create needless speculation. You know, why are you doing that? So he's a human being. You know, maybe he just made a mistake. You know me, Occam's razor guy. Simplest answer is usually the right one.
I wonder if that's the simplest answer, though.
Yeah, well, and again, there's a speculation, and I'm not criticizing you for saying that.
Right.
I don't blame you at all.
Yeah,
I
that's
asked
what's going
myself
on, though, right?
the same questions, and it wasn't needed. It wasn't. It was a simple answer, a simple question, and he should have fended it off like it was nothing, and it created this needless speculation. So then, if you want to go down the dark routes and say he doesn't like Nick Sirianni, you know, you got some fodder for it. Not that it matters, but, you know, how he produces on the field is going to matter most. Obviously, Nick has stepped back from the offensive perspective of this team, and it's going to be Kellen Moore's issue to deal with anyway. Maybe was frustrated about the struggles in the spring of another new offense, and because they, you know, you heard it from all of us that were down there. The offense, the first team offense, didn't look particularly good. And, you know, when I break it down, AJ looked fine. Devontae looked fine. Dallas looked really good.
You know, offensive line wasn't a part of it.
Offensive line wasn't a part. Saquon wasn't a part. I mean, they didn't even look at him. It was like he wasn't there. He was a
big nothing burger. It's a big nothing burger.
Well, no, I'm saying when we say the offense struggled and you break it down to little points, well, the quarterback struggled. Because there were plays, especially Dallas Goedert, there were at least 3 touchdowns there with Dallas Goedert open, just off. You know, is that Dallas Goedert struggling or the throw struggling?
Really shows how much this season is going to come down to quarterback one, Jalen Hurts. I mean,
yeah, well, the sporting cast is obviously very good. It's just a matter of how good.
well, yeah, and the supporting cast is only as good as the guy that can deliver them the football. That's the NFL. That's how football works. I mean, you can have the greatest wide receivers on the planet, but if you don't have, a quarterback who's playing good ball and getting them the football,
Yeah,
you're not
that's
going to be
what,
that good.
whomever you think is the best wide receiver in football, and I've been talking about this since the days of Randy Moss. They're at the mercy of the vehicle getting the football at some stage.
Yeah, for
So,
sure. Yeah.
no matter how good you are, and you'll probably see it this year with Jefferson getting the largest contract, at least as we stand now, for a non-quarterback in NFL history, deservedly so for his first number of years in the league. He no longer has Kirk Cousins. So is he going to put up those same numbers? Probably not. Is he going to be a worse player? A bunch of people will say it. Is it the case? Probably not. He doesn't have the same guy throwing them the football.
Yeah, a lot hinging this year on quarterback one. John, I do want to move on from this topic, but I do have one other question, and I'll ask you to speculate if you can. Who do you think we're talking about here when they say several key figures inside the Eagles organization?
Well, I think it would start at the very top.
Yeah.
They don't want this crap. Jeffrey and Howie. I mean, why wouldn't you be disappointed? That's how I look at it. I'd be.
Yeah, I mean, your highest paid guy in your room, not coaches included, staff included, the highest paid man in the organization technically made the organization look bad with a 7-week layoff. Left a lot of questions to be answered, left a lot of speculation, as you said. Yeah, I mean, I get it. If you're an owner of this team, I wouldn't be happy either.
Yeah, and not that it's a big thing, but I mean, if you have two avenues there, you can make the layup or miss the layup, and he missed the layup. So obviously, if you boil it down to that, you're going to be disappointed about missing a layup. It's not the end of the world, but I don't think Howie and Jeffrey would be human beings if they weren't disappointed at that particular answer, to be honest.
You think they approach Jalen Hurts about stuff like that?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure he was talked to about it.
I don't mean the PR. I don't mean asking Bob Lang to walk up to him. I'm talking about, do you think that the people that matter in the organization say something to him in that moment? An owner, Jeffrey Lurie, like, hey, Jalen, let's have a conversation about this.
I doubt it from the standpoint of, Jeffrey wants to stay above that kind of stuff, but
yeah,
he may have directed someone. He may have directed Howie. You probably don't want Nick to handle it for obvious reasons. So I don't know, maybe they'll address it when he comes back and say, don't do it again. I don't think he can make a big deal out of it either, but, please understand the situation. You can even frame it as it's not a big deal, but the city you're in, Birds 365 and a bunch of other shows that cropped up after Birds 365 are going to talk about it all the time, even when we don't want to talk about it. And believe me, sometimes I don't want to talk about this stuff, but what are you going to do? He did it. I didn't do it. You can ignore it. I don't have the pom-poms, Zander. I never have the pom-poms. So I'm not going to ignore it and lie to people and say, why wouldn't you be disappointed? Other than if you want to make excuses for the guy. If that's your goal, that's the only reason. Disappointed isn't, the end of the world. But why wouldn't you be disappointed? That's how I look at it.
Yep, I agree with that for sure. I'm going to stay on Nick. I want to ask another question about Nick, John, just because I read your article about his political savvy, and I want to introduce to, as you've done many times, but I want to introduce to the viewers the other viewpoint on Nick Sirianni, and I think it's actually a good one. And I'm somebody that's been beaten down on Nick Sirianni. I am not a big Nick Sirianni guy. I've been open about that, but I do think that there is a good premise there. Before I do that, let me bring up James Carver, gives us 1999 super chat. James, thank you, man. Starting the week off strong on this offseason. We appreciate you as always for being here. Think Hertz correctly saw premise of first setup and link to second, i.e. Nick is open to changing entire O and it set up a no-win answer. His O and roll second needed entire change. Or two, Jalen want to suggest all fell on Nick Sirianni. Yeah, I mean that's fair. That's a fair comment there, James Carver. John, you have any comment or response there to James?
Well, Jalen's the one who said it was 95% different. So
Right.
he brought that up himself. And he wanted that out there. As far as looking back and placing blame on last season on Nick Sirianni, um, no, I don't think it was about that. I mean, I think, players generally are forward thinking. They're not thinking about the past that much. Um, I think it was more about the struggles in the moment and trying to explain the struggles in the moment, trying to explain they're changing to a new offense and there's going to be some hiccups and all that stuff because everybody thinks this is the greatest offense in the history of football. That those are the expectations, the talent, and Saquon only added to that. And a bunch of nobodies on defense that's supposed to be the worst defense in the world coming in with a bunch of rookies and young players are dominating them in 7-on-7s. What's going on here? I think it was about trying to explain that more than anything that happened last year.
Yeah, maybe Jalen's all right with the fallout of this because it certainly took a lot of the talk and the notice off of what the offense did and a lot onto the head coach Nick Sirianni. But James, thanks for the super chat, man. We appreciate it, John. Good breakdown there. Thanks for sharing that with us, John. I want to bring up the article about the political savvy. Is there a chance that everybody and me included, not so much you because you wrote the article and you gave me the new point of view, but that many people are seeing this completely wrong on Nick Sirianni? Was this I don't want to say masterful, but was it a good move for him to relinquish his reins of the offense as a big picture thing? I want everybody to think for a second. Think about if you were the head coach of this football team. I don't want you to comment on. Think about if you were the head coach and you were trying to get your team back to where it went. If this team has success, I mean, Nick Sirianni's in a great position. If it fails, he's gone, but he would have been gone anyway if it failed, whether he was calling the plays or he wasn't. So you wrote a column about the political savvy of him and him kind of being willing to bring in Kellen Moore as his decision to get rid of the offense. Just comment on that for me and elaborate on what you mean by the political savvy of Nick and how it might really turn in his favor.
Well, I think you have to understand the situation he was in. And when you have these exit meetings with Jeffrey Lurie, so, he came in, we can go back to Doug Peterson as an example. You can handle it one of two ways. Look at my resume. Look at the larger picture. I want to double down. I want to keep my guys. I want to keep Brian Johnson. I want to keep Alex Tanney. Got to keep most of his other offensive coaches anyway. And if you go in there with that approach to Jeffrey Lurie's going to do what he did to Doug Peterson and say, well, either you back down and do this or you're fired. So that to me was the situation Nick Sirianni was in. And he understood that, and he made the best of that particular situation. The reason I wrote this is because on 2 occasions last week, I heard the term demotion used to describe what's going on with Nick Sirianni.
Yeah, right here on this show. A couple of guests we had on. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And, as I wrote, the nameplate still says head coach. The checks haven't been docked. So why was he demoted? And the answer that people, And I get it. People are hyper focused on X's and O's when it comes to football, and they think that's a demotion. It's not a demotion from the standpoint of, when Jeffrey hands off the 53-man roster, everything football related is still Nick Sirianni. And by taking control of that route that was going to happen anyway, he was able to hire his own coaches. You got it from Bobby King. I know nobody believes this, but he hires his own coaches. He hired Kellen Moore. And from that standpoint, don't get me wrong, I fully believe, and I will never not believe, that Nick Sirianni wanted to give up his offense, but he was forced to. So instead of being forced literally, he took control and said, this is happening anyway. So how can I best manipulate the situation to keep himself in the best position possible? And, describe it any way you want it, but he's still standing. He's still the head coach, still got the same contract. And now he's got the fresh coat, as I said, of selfless paint on him. So if he went the other way, he'd not only be perceived as a lame duck, but he'd be even further weakened because he has these limitations that are basically almost guaranteeing an impending exit. So if they fail, as you said, Zander, nothing matters. If they fail, he's going to lose his job. But he's widened the path to keep his job 2025 and beyond by what he did. And if Kellen Moore is successful and the Eagles go to the Super Bowl, Kellen Moore's going to be head coach somewhere else, and Nick Sirianni's going to be the head coach here, and everything's back on track. And, he'll get back to what he wants to do. If not, obviously, and there's tremendous expectations on the team, he's out the door. But as I said, the political talent comes in from understanding the situation and best manipulating the situation. So Jeffrey Lurie, I don't care how many people say it to you, didn't order him to do anything because he was too smart to understand he was going to get ordered. So he handled it the best way possible.
Yeah, look, I'm not here to tell anybody who's listening what to believe or how to view it, but I will present to you the alternate viewpoint of maybe Nick made a good decision. Maybe Nick put his ego to the side and said, I don't care about calling plays or having that title. I care about creating a winning football team. And if I think Kellen Moore is going to do a better job at this offense and it's going to make me a better head coach, Eagles fans should be excited for that. Now, I'm not saying that's definitely what happened. I think it's still plausible that.
Yeah, I don't even believe that. I don't believe that for a second. But, that's the situation he's in. And you can only make the most of your situation. So that's the easiest way I can describe my thoughts. I think he made the best of his situation. I don't think Nick Sirianni would ever give up his offense if he didn't have to. That's just my belief. And that belief is fueled by his own words numerous times. And not to say you can't have an epiphany, not to say you can't change your mind, but he loved his offense and he believed.
He loved it, but he wasn't willing to die on that hill. I mean, at least that's how it appears now.
No, and he wasn't, because there's 32 of these jobs.
Yeah.
And you make a lot of money. And that's part of it. Real world is part of it. He's got a family. He's got 3 kids. He's got a wife. All of that factors into the real world aspect of it. But my whole take on the demotion thing is, all right, if you're only worried about on field, you're only worried about play calling, and a lot of people are, then you can argue it's a demotion. But I've never heard of demotion. He's got the same title. He's got the same job description. He's still in charge of everybody. He's making the same amount of money. I don't call that a demotion.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, you're making the same amount of money. You didn't get demoted. Ask anybody who's ever been demoted what it means to be demoted. Let's get to our first commercial break, Johnny Mac. I am ready to move on from the whole topic, but I'm sure we'll ask Kerr about the key figures as well, obviously. So we'll have Jeff Kerr coming up next. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Pretty good crowd here on this Monday morning. June 17th, everybody, just 81 days away from that Green Bay opener in Brazil. Boy, am I getting excited. We will see. I'm excited to see how this all plays out. I'm excited for football to be back. I mean, I don't know about everybody else. I watched the U.S. Open this weekend. That was really good on Sunday, but I am not as big on the NBA and the playoffs there. I don't think that finals hasn't been
the Boston
great.
Celtics are about to be coronated. Yeah, they went a different way.
You still have hate, Johnny Mac, for the Celtics? Anybody that watches Birds?
I don't any longer. In fact, I can never root for the Celtics. There's too much angst and history there. But I do have respect for how they run their organization versus the team that I loved, who went about it a different way and shit the bed on 75. Now they got all these excuse makers. You got me on a rant.
No, go on it.
Well, they didn't let Sam Hinkie see it out. Blah blah blah. By the way, the guy's never gotten another professional sports job.
Yeah.
Would you shut up, those people? Everybody knew what a joke he was. Everybody knew it's not a trick to lose and lose and lose and hope you get the best player in the draft. You're not playing chess. It's obvious what you're doing. The Celtics went a different way and they built traditionally, and here they are in the crux of another championship. It's annoying.
Yeah, they rebuilt it on the fly, by the way, and went to the playoffs basically every year during that rebuild.
Yeah, I mean, and it's annoying when a team like that, it's not the Bill Russell days, but, they got one with Garnett, obviously, and now they're going to get another one with Jason Tatum and Brown. But, the Sixers, I'm glad I don't have to deal with that team, that organization any longer. And maybe that's a positive for Eagles fans to get it back to the Eagles, because Josh Harris stinks as an NBA owner. So maybe he'll stink as an NFL owner. But he's got to be better than Daniel Snyder.
Yeah, that's the bad part. But you are right, boy. The Sixers are a mess. And the more you watch the NBA, you see how bad the Sixers really are in a bad spot, and what they did was completely wrong. And other sports news, everybody's talking about, a couple of people in the chat talking about that U.S. Open. I'm a big golf guy. I'm a big golf fan. That was a tremendous finish. Rory McIlroy just chokes a 4-foot putt.
Poor Rory.
Poor Rory. I mean, but I'm a huge Bryson DeChambeau fan, so I thought that was cool. He stayed till 10 o'clock at night, John, signing autographs. He got every single person who waited for him after that win. And I just think that's cool. Professional athlete, he didn't have to do that. He could have easily left and went and partied and done whatever he wanted to do. He stayed, signed everything. That was cool. And then the NHL playoffs, that's the Stanley Cup. We're in the final series. I don't know if anybody's a hockey fan. I grew up playing hockey, so I like hockey. Big win the other night for the Oilers to finally get on the board. Maybe they woke a sleeping giant there. They put up 6 or 7 goals in that game. So good one there. Let me answer Raytwan Mitchell. Zander, what happened on the Sill Show Friday? We had a major internet dropout in California where Dan's located, and he couldn't get on the show until 4 p.m. Now at 4 p.m., I had to attend. My littlest sister was graduating from Drexel University down at Citizens Bank Park. So I couldn't do from 4 to 6. He couldn't do from 2 to 4. And ultimately, it was really just a bad setup. So we had to move. We had to cancel the show, which was unfortunate. But he will be back on today at 2 p.m. So make sure you're there, Raytwan. We will see you in the chat, hopefully, for Sills this afternoon. And if you can't make it, catch the replay. So we appreciate that. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in this morning. We had a good crowd, like I mentioned. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hoping to hear from Jeff Kerr. I haven't seen him check in yet. He does have the link, so we're hoping to hear from him. If not, I have some good topics to run by Johnny Mac. So drop a like on the show, everybody. Stay tuned. Birds 365 will be right back.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Heading down the shore. Have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wildwood day.
Plan your stay in the Wildwoods.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles. EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to Birds 365. We are McMullen days away from the Eagles opener. Johnny Mac, do you get my reference?
McMullen days away. I do not. I'm not quite that old.
A shout to Billy McMullen, a third-round pick for the Philadelphia Eagles in 2003. Had 52 receptions, 725 yards for the Eagles. He wore number 81, Johnny Mack, and we are 81 days away. I was going to go Terrell Owens, but I'm like, let me see if I can pull something a little better than T.O. I'll give Jason Avant a nod, too. He wore 81 as well.
Well, I don't remember. I remember Billy got traded to Minnesota, and he wore some kind of 12, 13, somewhere in that range, 10, something. I don't remember what it was, but I wasn't here when Billy was here. But yeah, it's good that a McMullen was an Eagle.
There you go. Johnny Mack is not an Eagle, but Billy McMullen was an Eagle, so we appreciate Billy McMullen, and we are 81 days out from Eagles. Let's get to Jeff Kerr, who joins us now on Birds 365. Jeff, what's going on, man? How you doing?
I think John McMullen could have been a better NFL player than Billy McMullen.
Yeah, he might.
I don't think so. Come on, Billy was Billy hung around for a while. You got to give him credit. I'm looking him up now. Played 50 NFL games. That's an accomplishment.
Yeah, that's an accomplishment. 6'4", 210.
That's an accomplishment, Jeff Kerr. It's hard to play in the NFL.
It is hard to play in the NFL, but when Donovan McNabb literally had nothing at wide receiver till Terrell Owens.
Oh, well, yeah, it's a third-round pick. Yeah, he was a third. That's a disappointment. He wore number 12 in Minnesota. That's what, that's what I remember.
It's funny. I remember him playing more for the Vikings than I did for the Eagles. He just couldn't crack the field when he was in Philly.
Yeah. You remember who he was traded for? I remember that because I was covering the Vikings.
Oh, man. Yeah, I got to think about this one quick.
He's somewhat famous for a different reason, maybe.
It's Hank Baskett, right?
Hank Baskett,
yeah.
For his wife, Kendra.
Hank had a couple nice years.
No, he had a nice, he was better than Billy, I would say.
I would say that. He had 2 90-yard catches in a season once.
Yeah, so I would say it worked out. And he, by the way, he was the rare undrafted free agent to get traded. He was a rookie undrafted free agent in Minnesota, and they traded him for Billy McMullen. Of course, he was married to Playboy playmate Kendra Wilkinson, which is his greatest accomplishment, I would argue.
Well, that's why he was so successful, John.
Yes.
We are on a Billy McMullen tangent, and I absolutely love it. Jeff, we got to do it. We got to do it. I told John I'm done with it, but we have to do it. What do you make of the Jeff McClain report of several key figures now inside the Eagles organization not happy with QB1's comments? Like I said, I don't want to do it, Jeff, but we got to do it. We're in June, and we are going to talk about this until we're blue in the face. What do you make of it?
Well, I'm not surprised. I don't think that the Eagles pertain. If we're talking strictly the organization, they couldn't have been happy just because we are talking about it right now. And it was a softball question. It was a softball question that required a softball answer, and Jalen just didn't give one. And look, I'm not going to question Jalen Hurts' leadership or anything like that, but I'm still kind of shocked. And 11 days after this has happened, how a guy who prepares for press conferences and a guy who likes to get his word out just wasn't prepared for a question like that? Or was he?
I think he was.
Yeah, and there's the speculation. That's what I got from someone with the Eagles, Jeff. I mean, you create this vacuum. You got 6-7 weeks, and we're talking about it. Like, why? It's an unforced error. Why wouldn't they be disappointed? That's how I look at it. For the people that want to jump on their sword for Jalen, defend Jalen at all costs, why wouldn't you be disappointed? Why? It's a layup, as you said. So I don't even think I would be shocked if they weren't disappointed.
You know what's a good comparison right now, John? Now that we're on this whole sports and tangent, basically, Jalen Hurts had a 4-foot putt to get par at the U.S. Open.
Yeah, there we go.
Nice. Didn't get it.
Nice. Yeah, we were just talking about the U.S. Open. Yes, exactly. So
I don't want to go there, Jeff. You think Jalen Hurts' squander was as big as a squandering a U.S. Open inside 4 feet? I don't know.
But professional athlete, I missed that putt. We've all missed putts like that in our lives. And someone who used to golf regularly, I can tell you it's one of the most frustrating things in the world. But you got to make that putt. You got to.
You're right, Jeff. You're right. You got to make that putt.
Yeah, that's where I like the comp is that you got to do it. It's easy. You got to do it. And for Jalen, that was easy. You got to do it. Get out of there. Just say, yeah, he's doing a great job. And move on to the next question.
Yeah. Lie to my face. I don't care, Jalen, because guess what? As a reporter, I'm going to say, well, this is what Jalen said. We can speculate if he actually believes that or not, but now he actually gave us something.
Yeah. Yeah, it was an unforced error, as I describe it. And needless speculation is what I got from an Eagles source, which I agree with. I
agree with too.
And, it's going to be this way until training camp. And by the way, at the beginning of training camp, he's going to get asked about it. And he'll probably deflect it from there. But, if he doesn't shut it down, it's going to continue and continue and continue. So again, from a standpoint of, I don't know if the Eagles are going to sit him down or how they're going to handle it, but, don't create unforced errors.
But my issue is too with the whole thing for people defending him. And look, I defend Jalen Hurts a lot too. I think he's one of the game's top 10 quarterbacks, but you're part of the problem too, Jalen. You turned the football over 21 times. I've seen Eagles fans chastise Carson Wentz, chastise Donovan McNabb, Randall Cunningham. My dad would tell me back in the day they would crucify Ron Jaworski for returning the football. Don't change it now because you want Jalen to be Michael Jordan. And guess what? Michael Jordan, the quote-unquote Eagles version of Michael Jordan, has not won yet.
Well, I was talking about this, Jeff, because you were there a lot during the spring. And we all saw, and the Eagles' first team offense specifically struggled. But when Zander and I were talking about it before you came on, and I boil it down and I say to myself, Well, that AJ was good. AJ was AJ. Devontae was good when he showed up at minicamp. Dallas Goedert, I thought, was great. He was open. Bunch of touchdowns were
I
there.
thought all the tight ends were good.
Yeah, I'm not going to go that far, but
Well,
Dallas was.
CJ had a couple drops, but yeah.
Yeah, Dallas certainly was. The offensive line isn't really involved, so we're not talking about them. Saquon wasn't involved for whatever reason. You can criticize Saquon, and I have, but he wasn't involved. So what are we talking about when we say the first team offense struggled? Well,
QB1.
Yeah. And for all those that say, I kind of wrote something about Saquon as well. And I said, well, he didn't do anything. He didn't splash. Well, you can't do that in the spring. Well, Kenny Gainwell did it in OTAs, and then he was bad in minicamp. Will Shipley, it was like a 180. He was bad in OTAs, and then he was good in minicamp. Those guys showed up. Even Kendall Milton showed up.
They need a running back. So yeah. Kendall Milton might be it.
Well, I'm not going to go that far, but at least he showed up in practice a little bit, granted with the third team. But my overriding point is we're talking about 1-2 players as struggling, and that had an impact on, and obviously the most important one is the guy delivering the football. If you have, I counted 3 touchdowns that were there for Dallas Goedert in drills. Bad throws, overthrow, underthrow, wide right, I think it was. If those are 3 touchdowns, you get a whole different narrative about the spring.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm always one of those guys that practice is practice. And is he working on stuff in practice? Absolutely, he is.
It's possible.
New offensive coordinator. I mean, they're going to work on new things, right?
Yeah, but I agree with you, John, too. And in this case, there are some throws that you're like, okay, where you're practicing or not, that's a layup again. So, and you just can't make that. I don't know. And whether he is frustrated with everything that's going on or not, that's why I get frustrated when someone like him, if he is frustrated, because if you play better, if you don't turn the football over, if your team doesn't lose 6 or 7, which, by the way, you're one of the leaders of this football team, you didn't fix it either. So they fixed it. And they got rid of they probably made some decisions you weren't happy with. But that's the way it is. And you signed the contract. So,
yeah, it's time to take off the kid gloves with the first string quarterback. That's where I think we are. I mean, I see a lot of people who are afraid to criticize Jalen Hurts. I mean, yeah, he handled that poorly.
It's funny how that works, because I believe there should be more of a spotlight. I mean, when you're making what you're making, when you are the part of the team that you are, the leader of the team, the leader of the clubhouse, the quarterback won for, one of the biggest organizations in the world, biggest football organizations in the world. The onus is on, the pressure is on. It's funny how that works, where it's like, that happens and then nobody wants to criticize him, when it really should probably be the opposite, where there's more pressure and you have to live up to that contract, you have to live up to those expectations that come with it. And it's only fair to ask the question. By the way, the coaches aren't lining up inside the lines. The coaches aren't calling hike and throwing the ball and catching the ball. You would think they are, right, with the way they're criticized, but the players, there always should be accountability on players. And sometimes it's hard, I think, for fans, me included, to go that route. But that's the right, I think that's the right way to do it.
I've said this for years with this regime. This is even going back to Joe Banner. This has been going back 30 years. Remember when Terrell Owens wanted Donovan McNabb to kind of vouch for him about his contracts? And McNabb goes, it's not going to do much. Like, basically, McNabb said it without saying it. It's not going to do much because that's just not how they roll here. If Donovan could say, I need him, I'm not, and then Donovan ain't going to say, I'm not going to play. Donovan's not, but the quarterback doesn't have the say in this organization like, say, a Tom Brady would in New England. Tom Brady didn't even have that.
Jeff, I want to ask you, moving a little bit off, still in the same breath, though. What will equal success this year for the Philadelphia Eagles? How good do they have to be? I mean, we're talking about Nick and the new offense and Jalen. What does success mean this year for the Philadelphia Eagles?
To me, with the talent on this team, you have to at least win a playoff game, at the very least. I think if they went to the NFC Championship, I think if they don't have a late season collapse, I think that's success. Because it's hard to win a Super Bowl. Let's be realistic.
Yeah, right.
And I don't think Jalen's going to turn the football over 21 times this year. I think he's going to be better this year. If there's drama throughout that locker room and if they win 12, 13 games and go deep in the playoffs, then that's a fine year. There's nothing wrong with that. I just think everything just snowballed at once last year after the 10-1 start. And I didn't like the way that team was talking even when they were 5-0 and this and that. Well, we're not. Well, no, you are what your record says you are. So figure it out. And I still am very upset at this team for how they reacted after beating the Giants on Christmas. They acted like they lost the game. And I'm like, you guys haven't won a game in a month. And you're acting like you lost. There's problems here.
Yeah, the most miserable 10-1 team was the description. I do think expectations play into it. That was one of the reasons. Like, they're winning games, and everybody, yeah, but they don't look that good, and blah, blah, blah. And it almost became a self-fulfilling prophecy at a certain point. Once San Francisco just beat the brakes off of them, it seemed like they lost all their confidence. And confidence is a big thing with professional athletes. And when you're not playing with confidence, it can affect you dramatically.
Ask
and then
Alex
there's
Home.
yeah. Then there's games one way, you know. The Seattle game, they should have beat Seattle. They should have beat Arizona. And who knows if that, you know, even scratching and clawing, because I know everybody's like, well, you should beat this team, you should beat that team. It's an NFL team. Everybody can beat everybody. Everybody's got good players. I say it all the time. Pick up any roster in the NFL, you're going to find 10, 12 really good players. Really good players. It's not like college. And I think a lot of people see somebody on the schedule and say, that's a win. And then all of a sudden, you know, it becomes incredibly disappointing when it turns into a loss. You know, over the years with the New York Giants, the Eagles have dominated the Giants over
2 decades.
A pretty extended period of time. But there's little hiccups in there, you know.
Yeah,
Saquon beat him twice. That's why he's here. Lost to him, whatever, 10 times. Beat him twice. Everybody's got good players in the NFL.
Yeah, and I agree with you on this too, John. Seattle and Arizona, like those are the games where you just go back and think, how did this happen? Like, you know, I wrote it off after they lost to San Fran, Dallas. I'm like, okay, well, you lost to them. They're better than you. That's fine. You still can control the narrative here and go beat these teams and still win 12, 13. By the way, the Eagles win 13 games last year. Their home field advantage. They would have had the first round bye.
Right.
Now, if they would have lost, it would have been a massive disappointment, but at least you still had it. You could still control your narrative. But when you lose to Drew Lock of all people, and the way you lose to Drew Lock. And look, the Eagles did this to themselves too with the coordinator change. Was it necessary? No.
Even if the size sucked and you hated them, it wasn't necessary.
Players hated them.
Yeah, but that's part of the equation, right? Like even if
that's their fault, Jeff. Why would you hate Sean Desai?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I've heard my stories, John. You've heard them.
I know. Sean Desai's one of the. It's like, all right, you know. He he wasn't equipped to be a defensive coordinator. So, you know, I would have moved on after the season. I don't think it does any good in season. And I think, you know, now that we saw it, you saw how bad it was.
Yeah, it did harm.
Yeah,
it's not that
they even got worse. But from the standpoint of guys bailing on Sean Desai, one of the funniest things to me, Jeff, is like Sean, because of his lack of experience and his lack of presence. I kept hearing the word presence when it came to Sean Desai. Everybody questioned everything. What are you doing? What are you doing? Vic does the same shit and nobody utters a word. He's throwing everything at these guys. And I'm like, that's weird. Remember, I asked Evan White, I asked Evan White from his time in Tampa, is that typical? They throw everything and then scale back? Because I've always been told you build up and then you add things. Not Vic and not Sean. He did it the opposite way. You remember when he broke out James Bradbury in the slot? We're all looking at each other like, what the hell are you doing, dude? And everybody questions. Vic does shit like that. He's got Quinyon Mitchell, rookie cornerback, and his first minicamp playing dime linebacker.
Yeah.
And we're all like, oh, that's fine. That's Big Fangio.
Do you think
we're Sean Desai? I'm sorry, Jeff.
Oh, no, you're right, though.
No, but do you think it's because you got players in the past, the Ricky Jacksons, when Sam Mills was alive? He said it. Patrick Willis, Navarro Bowman, guys like that who were raving about Vic. I mean, Vic was in Minnesota, right, John? He was in Minnesota at one point.
No, he's Chicago.
Oh, Chicago. That's it.
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought he was in Minnesota like in the 90s or something.
No,
No, Carolina, he was in the 90s.
Yeah, he's been a lot of places.
Yeah.
Minnesota's one of the few he hasn't been.
But when you got legends at positions just saying left and right how much they learned from him.
I'm not, by the way, that is not a criticism of Vic Fangio. I'm trying to point out how things get
But do you think it's a resume thing? That's where I'm going toward this. Like Sean Desai just doesn't have the resume.
It's absolutely, that's where I was going. It's absolutely he is literally copying what Vic does. Vic taught him.
Yeah, I do that as a writer. You know, if I have a disagreement with an editor, I go by my experience. I say, well, that's all well and good, but are you actually right, though? Maybe that's what the players did.
Oh, I believe that's my whole point. My whole point is because of his reputation, people just like, all right. And because of Sean and his lack of reputation, they're like, I'm telling you, if Sean Desai was here as a first-year defensive coordinator this year, and Quinyon Mitchell was a dime linebacker in minicamp,
people would be going nuts.
They'd be burning the city down.
They've had the Phillies to distract them.
Well, you're probably right. But Vic can do it. And
I don't know. We got the Phillies now, and we're burning down the city about a Jalen Hurts comment, Jeff.
That's true.
Yeah, well,
by the way, Baltimore's handling your Phillies. That's a good team, Baltimore.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised by this week at all. Not at all. They always have trouble in Boston, and Phillies fans are very unrealistic, just like a lot of
it's like football. They treat every game like it's a football game.
Yeah, and Rob Thompson's the worst manager ever, and heaven forbid I mentioned Bryson Stott's a career 234 hitter. Oh, that's not the thing you should be worried about. Yes, it is when you have JT Realmuto and Trey Turner and this guy out. These guys have to step up, him and Nick Castellanos, and they're not doing it. I'm going to bring it up.
Philly's on a bit of a slide right now. Hopefully they can.
They'll fix it. I'm not.
I'm with you.
Talented team. They'll be fine. In baseball, you have these ebbs and flows. It's just the way it is.
Let's close the door here, though, on Sean Desai. I want to ask both of you the question: what is it then? Like, why did that? I want to move on because he's in the past and he's not with the Eagles anymore, and it doesn't really matter for the future of the team. But why? Why is he not? If he was doing what Vic did, is it all the intangibles? Is he just not built to lead grown men who are playing the sport at an elite level? How did you guys see Sean Desai? Why did it not work out? Because it doesn't really sound like it was too football related to me. They weren't a great defense. They weren't a great. Yeah. You could have given Vic Fangio to the team last year. They still wouldn't have been a great defense. They had no players.
Yeah, I always say
communication and presence, like what John said.
The minute Jim Schwartz walks into a room, you know he's in charge. Some people got it, some people don't.
Yeah, it's true.
I've said that playing sports as a coach, I say it too. You got to establish control right away. If not, forget it. It's, you're just not going to be respected. He wasn't respected, and I don't even think he was trying to be anybody's buddy. It's just, guys.
Yeah, it's not fair. He's more of
but it's
a
reality.
civil.
Fair, life's not fair. The world isn't fair. Nothing
No.
is fair,
He's an education major. He's a cerebral guy. He's quiet. He's understated. He's smart,
Maybe too smart.
Yeah, this is football. You got to be an alpha dog at some point. You got to be smart, but you got to, like I said, Jim's the best example here that I've seen, Jim Schwartz, to the point where you remember when Doug Peterson first got the job. I think it was Mike Lombardi with that stupid story.
But by the way, the fact that people still take Mike Lombardi's opinion seriously just drives me insane.
He thought Jim was trying to undercut Doug and get the head coaching job or I don't remember, but, and I said at the time, well, he acts like a head coach, but that's because he was a head coach. That's because that's the way he is. He owns every room he walks into.
And Doug liked that, by the way.
And Doug did deal with it. Did pretty well, as a matter of fact. So, there's a lot to presence when it comes to an NFL team, NFL locker room. And I just don't think he had it. But I also say, I think that was Nick's biggest mistake last year. And by the way, it is Nick. Nick fired him.
Yeah.
Nick demoted him. Sorry. Did not fire him.
Which was stupid in its
own way. But by the way, how embarrassing was that for Sean Desai?
That's what I mean. It made it worse, in my opinion. If you're going to move on and you're going to make that decision, just fire the guy. I mean, what you put him up and they're showing him on the telecast in the playoff game, him calling from the box, that doing nothing. What is he telling Matt Patricia what to call? That was stupid. The whole setup of that was stupid.
It was. And I said, for the people arguing that Nick Sirianni should lose his job, they always talk offense, how stale the offense is, how the bubble route, they can't handle a blitz, blah, blah, blah. I said, if your strongest argument for Nick Sirianni to be fired was Sean Desai.
Yeah, and the handling of that.
I still believe that.
When people were saying the offense was stale last year, I got roasted on Twitter when – you guys remember, I think it was the Cardinals game when Jalen Hurts took a shotgun snap. It was supposed to be somewhat of an RPO, and he was supposed to get rid of the ball quick, and he didn't, and he kept it, and he lost like 10 yards. I said, that ain't the coach. That's the quarterback.
No, well, yeah.
Hey, can't say that. Can't say Eagles' running game is good because we got local boy DeAndre Swift. I'm like, DeAndre Swift isn't good, people. I'm just telling you right now, he's not. He wasn't that type of player you thought he was. I mean,
and the local guy was not happy here.
No, he wasn't, and he made that clear. He wasn't happy here a couple times.
I want to move on. Let's move on here. I want to hit Twiz. This is a good comment. Howie's fault, Nick's fault, Jalen's fault, Desai's fault, Pencil's fault. How about
I like Pencil's fault.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good comment there, Twiz. Thanks for checking in, brother. We appreciate it here every day.
I didn't see Jalen in there though. That's
no. I thought he put Jalen.
Was he in there?
Did Twiz intentionally leave out Jalen? Did he?
Nobody wants to blame Jalen.
No, he mentioned Jalen. I thought he did.
Did he?
Yeah,
okay. He's in there. All right. I apologize. I missed it. Yeah, I'm glad. Because I think, you brought up Donovan, Zander, you brought up Ron Jaworski back in the day. Like, why do so many people have a problem? Even Jalen Hurts doesn't have a problem with you criticizing him.
No,
he knows that. Typically, that's part of the gig when you're a starting quarterback in the NFL. You're going to get shit if your team loses. I've never seen a more protected quarterback in Philadelphia.
But don't go after that guy in Dallas who did have a better year last year than Jalen.
No, I'm talking from a fan base standpoint.
You're right on that, though, Jeff.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have taken the Dak Prescott. I wouldn't have taken the result.
Well, yeah. I get. Zander and I had it out with Micah Parsons. I mean, Eagles fans hate the Cowboys, and they're not going to give credit to any Cowboy player for being a good player. Even when Zach Martin goes in the Hall of Fame, they'll say he's overrated, or Micah
Well,
Parsons.
I did not give him credit, John. I just said I didn't think he was
Look,
generational.
I've heard for years growing up, Larry Allen was overrated. Eric Williams is overrated.
Larry Allen.
And I'd be like, Eric Williams is from stinking Philadelphia. Like, come on. I don't care. I'm like, do you think he chooses that? No, they're the team that signs. You just hate him because he's beating the crap out of Mike McMullen every week.
Yeah.
Jeff, you bridged me to my next question, what I wanted to ask you. The easiest way to get into the playoffs in the NFL is to win your division, right? I mean, you can be 9-7 if you win your 9-8. If you win your division, you're in. How are you viewing the NFC East going into this year? I think Dallas looks like they took a small step backward, maybe not huge. I think Washington got better, but how much better this year? Giants, I don't know. What do you make of the NFC East going into this year?
I think Washington did get better. I like what Washington's doing. I like the leadership. I think Dan Quinn is going to be a pretty good second-time head coach, honestly. Just from talking to him this offseason and gathering some information from their players. I don't think they're going to compete for this division this year, but I think they're on the upswing.
Yep.
The Giants, I think, are better, but they're still the Giants. It's hard for me to take them seriously as long as Daniel Jones is their quarterback. They lost their best player.
That's a big upgrade over last year.
Yeah, Nick's right. Nick Sirianni's right, though. We got your best player. And yeah, back again to the fans. No, our best players.
Dexter Lawrence, actually.
Yeah. Dexter Lawrence. I'm like, no.
By the way, Nick is 100% wrong. Their best player has been, will be, who is Dexter Lawrence. And it's not particularly close.
They did lose another one of their good players, too, Xavier McKinney.
Yeah, he was very good. The Eagles really won in here.
I like the wide receiver they picked up in the draft too, Malik Neighbors. I mean, that came. But as Johnny Mack and I pointed out in the opening of the show, Jeff, before you're here, wide receivers are only as good as the vehicle getting them the football. So it's going to come down to Daniel Jones is how good Malik Neighbors.
Daniel Jones.
They should have a Porsche.
Daniel Jones is an average NFL quarterback. I don't think he's terrible. I think he's an average starting quarterback.
The Giants fans think he's something else.
He is something else compared to Tommy DeVito. I mean, what they were playing with last year was really difficult. Defensively, it's interesting because they lost Wink Martindale, obviously. They went in a different direction. So they're not going to be the weirdo blitzing team anymore. But Lawrence is one of the best players in football. He's one of the best defensive tackles in football.
He's a stud. And by the way, they got Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau.
That's what I'm saying.
That's a nasty pass rush. Yeah,
that defensive front is looking good. Now losing McKinney hurts, but I'm a big fan of Deonte Banks. I think he's going to be a good player.
I like him too.
Overall, that's a bad team, a bad organization.
Have they done anything with that offensive line?
Yeah, they did. They added Runyon. They added Jermaine. I can never pronounce his name.
I don't mind Runyon. I think Runyon.
Yeah, John Runyon's okay. Andrew Thomas is a really good player. Evan Neal hasn't lived up to the billing, so to speak.
John Michael Schmitz wasn't that good his rookie year last year.
No. It's getting better. That's weird. They've had a bad offensive line for so long, and they've tried to fix it with like premium picks, and they just can't fix it.
You know what their issue really is with that organization, with their offensive line? They look at it as, okay, we had an average offensive line when we won 2 Super Bowls, so we can get away with that. Well, no, you can't. You can't get away with Sean O'Hara. And that's what they try to do. And nothing against Sean O'Hara. He's a good media guy. But you just can't do what you're doing on the offensive line now and expect to win football games. And they do it.
Yeah. Well, and we're going to see.
We're talking about Daniel Jones. His average output is equal to the highest paid quarterback at the moment. I guess he's alluding to Trevor Lawrence. But, yeah, it's true.
Yeah, well, that doesn't matter. Yeah. Contracts are about timing. Is it ridiculous that Trevor Lawrence is the highest paid quarterback? Or, I don't know, Joe Burrow might be tied, whatever.
They're tied. But you know what? They had to do it. They had to pay this guy. And
nobody's saying that makes him the best quarterback.
Oh, by the way, give Jacksonville credit for jumping on this early because Trevor
What would you
Lawrence
do
made
with
more.
what would you do with Tua? Because I'm not paying that guy.
I'm not
$50
paying.
million.
I'm not paying Tua. I'm not paying him.
Yeah,
the problem with it's the same conversation in Dallas. Now I think Dak Prescott's a lot better of a quarterback than Tua Tagovailoa.
Tua's gonna make a lot of money.
But what do you do, right? If you move on,
oh yeah,
Tua,
it's tough. It's
a
almost
tough
you don't want to
life.
be in that position.
I'll tell you what.
It's like
Dak,
I don't
go ahead,
I don't
Joe.
want to pay him. I don't want to pay him. I'm a big Trevor Lawrence guy coming out. I think he's still got tremendous upside, but
I do too.
don't
I
want
think
to pay
Trevor's
him
gonna be good.
that. I don't want to pay these guys that. It affects how you build the rest of your team. I to the point where, yeah, like I think Minnesota made bad decision after bad decision after bad decision, keep going down the route, and everybody knows. I think Kirk Cousins is better than. I think he's one of the most underrated quarterbacks ever. I think he's a really good quarterback, and he doesn't get credit for
The
it.
numbers actually show how underrated he is.
Yeah, his numbers are in.
But he's not top tier, and I don't want to pay him $50 million when he's not. He hasn't been the kind of guy who's willing to work with you to help build the roster in other places. So I look at what they did, and they find Sam Darnold, and I'm probably wrong. But I'm interested to see Sam Darnold play this year, Jeff, because one, he was under Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco last year. I have tremendous respect for Kyle Shanahan. And if anybody can get the talent out of somebody, two, he's never had a decent supporting cast. Now he's got Jefferson and Addison and Hawkinson and Aaron Jones and everybody in Minnesota. I want to see if he can play. I'd rather pay him $10 million than pay Tua Tagovailoa $50 million or Kirk Cousins, whatever he got guaranteed. All right, you're going to have great games. Miami scored 70 points.
Yeah.
You're not getting to where you ultimately want to go.
At the end of the year, I remember when they scored 70 and people were just raving about them. I'm like, okay, it's week 3 of the season.
Yeah, and then Sean Desai's defense shut him down right after that.
That's right.
Yeah, Sean
that's right.
this is how I always compare when someone has a big early. I'm like, I remember when the unstoppable Eagles with Michael Vick just blitzkrieged at the time, Washington, sorry. And Michael Vick looked unstoppable, and that team couldn't win a freaking game at the end of the season. So,
yeah, it's a tough decision though, because Zander's right. You're not going to get better than Tua.
Yeah, where do you
got to win?
And that's kind of where the Giants are right, John. Like the Giants paid what, $40 million for Daniel, and we can sit here and criticize Daniel. I don't like him either. I don't think the Giants are even a threat with them. But John said it, and I think John's right. He's a middle of the pack quarterback.
And guess what? He's getting paid right now like a middle of the pack quarterback.
You didn't pay top dollar for him, but what's the floor? If you're giving a new quarterback a new contract, what is the floor? I think $40 million is probably a low floor. I think that's the floor. If you're even Baker Mayfield, what he signed for? 45?
And that's why I'd rather go the churn route. I'm just going to throw guys in there and see if they can play and keep rotating.
Yeah, but you're going to live like the other half of the NFL. That
I really feel Tampa paid Mayfield, and again, it's not a long deal, but I really think it came down to Mike Evans like Baker Mayfield, and they wanted to keep Mike Evans, so that's what they did.
And Jalen's deal looks better by the day as all these deals come down.
Jalen, by the way,
is mediocre still. Because Jalen hasn't proven to me he's top tier.
Jalen Hurts is the 6th highest paid.
Be careful, Zander. Be careful.
Well, I'm just saying. I mean, that's just where I think the money kind of is irrelevant in these discussions, John. And you say it all the time. He's up next, so he's going to get the money, right? Like, but I don't think Jalen is Joe Burrow. I don't think Jalen is Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes. In fact, I don't even really think he's in the ballpark of those guys. But he's getting paid like he is. Now, I think we can win with Jalen. That doesn't mean I don't think we can win with them. But the money factor, it's almost irrelevant because that's who's next, and that's what they're going to get paid.
How about Josh Allen? He's the 10th highest paid quarterback in football.
Yeah, they got to give him a new deal soon, don't they?
I wouldn't. Not right now. I'd be like, hey, man, let's rest on laurels.
You can criticize Josh Allen and what and the success. Where are you going? Yeah, that's what I mean. They're going to pay that.
This is what I mean. I wouldn't pay him because you're getting rewarded for paying him early. You pay him when it's time to pay him.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned that Josh Allen was better than Jalen Hurts a month ago or so on the
He's
show, and I
always
got
been better than Jalen.
oh, he's always it's not even close, but I got killed for it. Well, he never won anything. I can't stand the never. Is it his fault Sean McDermott can't navigate 13 seconds? Like nobody looks at the content. What does that have to do with Josh Allen?
Or Sean McDermott didn't know how many guys there were on the football field on a field goal attempt.
I mean, everybody boils it down to quarterback versus quarterback. Like nobody else is working towards winning a football game.
Yeah,
So this is where, and I am the Windsor QB stat guy, but there's context to it. Like, if you have a big enough sample size there, but again, Josh Allen isn't the reason the Buffalo Bills lose playoff games.
No.
I could say Dak Prescott can be because he doesn't play like Dak Prescott.
People don't even remember how long Buffalo went without a playoff game, and now
win.
Oh, yeah. Now it's about they can't win the big game.
Just remember something and again, I'm the big Windsor QB stat guy. This is where I kind of argue with myself. Dan Marino won a road playoff game for the first time in his career at 38, and he sucked in the Kingdom. Absolutely sucked and won a playoff.
Well, my best example is John Elway. John Elway was losing Super Bowls when he was one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. When he won his 2 Super Bowls, he was an aging, complimentary player. That was Terrell Davis's team.
Not 98 though. He did play well in Super Bowl 33. He did throw for 300 in that game.
Check out the other Super Bowl, one of the worst Super Bowls ever by a quarterback, and they won. He was at the end of it, and even Peyton Manning. I call Peyton the greatest regular season quarterback of all time, the most consistent quarterback of all time. His second Super Bowl, he was awful. He was awful.
He was worse than a game manager.
How much let me ask you guys a question because we're talking about quarterbacks. It's a good conversation. How much stock do you guys put in like quarterback stats, yards, touchdowns?
0. I feel that 0. I do. That's me. That's me.
I use it to frame an argument.
You know, I always tell this story. I have never played and it stands to this day, and I will never play in any fantasy football league or play fantasy football. I never have. I never will.
What a shocker! You don't play.
I am not either, John. I've never played. I do not play fantasy.
People ask me, "Oh, can you join me?" I'm like, no, 0, no interest, none whatsoever. And it goes back to Troy Aikman again. Dallas people are going to hate me. I'm not a Cowboys fan.
You're not a fan
all these people used to say Troy Aikman was not a great quarterback because he didn't have great stats. Obviously, it was a different era of football, more run driven.
Pretty efficient though when he
did throw the
ball.
Very efficient. And at that point, I'm like, all right, you people are nuts. I have no desire to be involved with these types of conversations that don't understand that Troy Aikman is a Hall of Fame quarterback. So from that standpoint, when I say, and I'm being a little bit facetious, you have to have a bare minimum from statistics. But you know, Zander, from my arguments with Jody Mack over the years, he's a big stat guy. I wish arguing about stats was banned in football. It is not a statistical game. Jeff covers baseball. Baseball's a very statistical game.
Yeah,
large sample size.
Yeah, you could base anything pretty much off. Like if people went nuts when I mentioned yesterday Bryson Stott was hitting 171 over his last 28 games. They're like, oh, like he really isn't hitting. Yeah, he's not. It's not just me talking out my ass.
Yeah, but here's where I think the stats conversation is interesting pertaining to football and quarterbacks. Like Kirk Cousins, part of the reason we know Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback is because the guy throws 5,000 yards basically every year or close to it, right? Like, isn't that I think it's close to 5. I mean, but here's an example though. Tua Tagovailoa, like, are they going to move on from him? Last year he had 4,600 yards, 29 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, and a 101 quarterback rating. Like, where are they going to go? Jalen's never thrown 4,000 yards in his career, and he's getting paid $51 million.
But he's had 4,000 total yards in his career.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, but the thing is, and I because I've talked about Kirk for years, he's so consistent year after year after year after year, dating back to his days in Washington as a high volume thrower. But you're also, if you're getting up to the numbers that he would get up to, you're also playing from behind a lot. You're also
My dad calls them garbage numbers, empty numbers, whatever
That's
you
true. It's a good point. That's where the context of it is so deep.
And the lack of sample size, even though they keep going up and we're at 17 games, it's still a small sample size. So you can have a 73-point game, whatever Miami scored last year. It skews your whole season from a statistical standpoint.
You know what, John? There is a stat, though, that can determine the quarterback's worth. And it's giveaways. And this is why I got upset over the Lawrence thing when I mentioned how many giveaways he had last year and how many giveaways he has in his career for 3 years, and it's the most in the league. Well, Urban. I'm like, he had more giveaways last year. Urban wasn't
talking about just turnovers, right, Jeff?
Yeah, giveaway turnovers.
Well,
that's what
this
it
is the problem with Josh Allen too. Like, he's the one of the most talented quarterbacks in the league, but the guy does turn the ball over a lot.
So is Jalen.
That's the problem with the 2023 Jalen Hurts.
Well, no, Jalen turned it over a lot last year, and that's one of my that's one of the reasons you should have optimism. His history is he doesn't turn it.
Yeah,
over.
he's going to regress. He's going to regress back to where he should be. That's why he was so good in 22. He wasn't turning the football over at all.
Yeah. And that's, but when you talk about statistics and, there's some advanced statistics, points per drive, expected points per drive, that are meaningful, but, you want to roll your eyes when you talk about it.
But you know what's the problem when talking about EPA? And again, I've been doing this for a while. John, you've been doing this for a while. These geniuses with EPA never explain it to you. They just assume you know it. And that's what bothers me. And it's like that in baseball. You mean
I hate, baseball writing used to be the best thing ever, right? The old school writers, the romanticism of the sport. And now people are throwing slash lines in there. Like, couldn't write a freaking eloquent sentence if they're
John, I lost it the other day when someone pointed out to Corey Simon of NBC Sports Philly. Someone actually said this to Corey. Ricky Weeks in 2008, the second baseman of the Brewers, had a better season than Ryan Howard in 2008 because of WAR. He had a higher WAR. And I said, you got to be kidding me. Just tell me you did not watch either of those two play in 2008.
Well, yeah, and there's a fine line. What it is ugly, when you just boil it down and you lose and baseball, is a perfect example. For the younger viewers that don't know, baseball was once by far the most popular sport in America.
It was when I was growing up.
And now it's a distant third, I would argue.
Because fantasy baseball, you got to play every day, and fantasy football, you don't.
Well, I don't know about that, but
I'm telling you, people watch football not because I still say a lot of people don't know what they're watching. They watch fantasy and they watch gambling.
Yeah, and they watch players and stats.
Oh, and by the way, speaking of another, please, and I beg of you, Zander, I've already seen Madden rating leaks.
Oh, who cares what Madden thinks? Really?
Couple segments coming up on Birds 365.
Yeah, I'm taking those days off because that is the dumbest conversation in the history of the world.
John McMullen's in the 99 club.
That people give a shit about that.
Instead of doing Madden ratings, man, how about you improve your stinking game? Your game sucks.
Yeah. Well, I'm not a gamer.
It's a horrible football game.
Yeah.
It's just bad.
I've heard bad things about it, but I don't play video games, so that'll shock people as well. But
you know what's funny? They take their ratings to like everything now, like NASCAR.
Oh, I know. I actually got to it, and they were nice. I was nice. The actual Madden account, because I would just rip people for talking about Madden ratings back in the day, and they contacted me, and I was like, "Well, I think it's silly," and and they're trying to get me to talk about it. I'm like, you're barking up the wrong tree here. It ain't.
How do you determine who has like an 84 speed rating? Like,
I don't know.
How do you determine? John,
I don't know, and I don't care.
If we're playing this game, John Ross should have 100 speed rating.
You would think,
but he doesn't. I remember he had like 78. I said, no, he doesn't. Like
field speed. Yeah, we're already talking about Matt, and I brought it up. I killed myself by bringing it up.
Well, we're talking about it.
Came out, Johnny Mac. What's your reaction?
There's nothing John McMullen likes talking
about.
Now,
I will admit, and I have admitted to Chody, players care about it. They seem to care about it.
Darius Slay cares about
because
it.
they all play it, and it's a.
And I don't know why they give a shit, but a lot of them do. I'm not saying everyone. A lot of them don't give a shit like me, but a lot of them do care, and it makes no sense to me. None. Zero. It is absolutely worthless.
Do you think it's because maybe they're upset that's how somebody else thinks of them as a player?
Of course. Yeah. It's an ego thing. Yeah.
But if you're the 10th man on the practice squad, you would be rated in the 50s, right?
I don't know. I've never looked at them. I don't know how they do them. Of all the lists in its list season, that is the dumbest list of them all.
What's the second dumbest?
Pick any list you saw this morning.
I don't see any lists this morning. I try to take my time away.
I saw Mike Clay, who I like Mike.
I did. I saw that.
Mike's the man, by the way.
Yeah. He rated the linebackers groups in the NFL.
The Eagles are 30th?
Yeah, Eagles are 30th.
Shocker.
Which is about right, by the way.
Yeah, it's not wrong.
We've been on a litany of tangents, Jeff Kerr. Let's get back to the original question here.
I apologize.
What's your rankings in the NFC East this year?
Eagles, Cowboys, Commanders, Giants. There you go.
Yeah, that's what I have it at too.
It'll be completely wrong in 6 months, but whatever. Hey, you know what, Zander? Actually, since it is list season, one of my favorite articles I'm going to be writing, I'm starting it today, comes out in 3 weeks. When I get to pick who I think are the 5 worst teams in the NFL are going to be, and I get roasted, and I usually get 4 of the 5 right.
Yeah,
that'll be a topic on Birds 365.
So last year I said the Giants were going to royally suck, and the Patriots were going to be even worse. And I got oh, you're an Eagles fan. I said, 1, I'm not. 2, your team suck. You just don't want to admit it. 5 weeks into the year, was I retweeting that and tooting my own horn.
Jeff, give us one of your 5 right now. Will you do it? Will you give us one of your 5?
I got to think of one of my 5.
Who's New England? If you're not ready, you just said it. New England's going to be awful.
Yeah, well, I know New England's going to be awful, but I'm trying to go one outside the box here. Like one I think that isn't going to be good.
Not a Drake May fan, Johnny Mac, huh?
I'm not a Patriot.
No, I think it's a bad spot. They don't have support.
You know what? I got one. The Saints.
Wow, Johnny Mac won't like that.
No, I don't like. Jeff doesn't like Dennis Allen. I'm with him. I don't like Dennis Allen as a head coach. Way too much talent on defense to be.
Well, that's just it. That's why I probably won't go. Like I'm just thinking. I'm like, sooner or later this team's going to implode. But then I look. I'm like, okay, yeah, they're not the Patriots. They're not the Giants. I mean, can Carolina be as bad as they were again?
Yes. Probably not as bad, but those are the 2 teams I would go to as guaranteed bottom feeders.
Patriots and Panthers.
Patriots and Panthers. Las Vegas, I think, is going to be bad.
Yeah, they don't have a quarterback.
And I'm trying to think.
Denver. I should go
Denver. Commanders, I think, are a year away. Depends on if Jaden Daniels, he might be able to do some things.
This also
but
goes
Yeah, I
by
don't think they're gonna be bottom
expectation
five
too.
with
Like
Commanders.
people for some reason thought the Giants were going to be good last year. It only took me 2
well,
quarters
because
into
they
a
made the
season.
playoffs. Yeah,
I
they
that
won a
was
playoff game, Jeff.
I don't care. My bold prediction was we have to do one for CBS Sports each week. I still remember my week 1. I'm like, all right, I'm really gonna get Cowboys fans riled up here. I said the Cowboys are gonna beat the Giants by 30 points. I think they were up 30 points in the first half.
You know who the Giants' secret weapon is this year? My guy, Jack Stoll.
Yeah, Jack Stoll. I thought you were gonna go a little crazier than that, but yeah, that's a good one.
No,
Jack-
Devin Singletary said
Yeah.
he's going to be the same type of playmaker Saquon was.
No, he's
So
not.
we're going to see.
Devin
We're gonna
Singletary-
see.
Jeff, I'm going to call you out. I got a call out for you. You just
All
said
right.
you didn't care the Giants won a playoff game, but when I asked you what defines success for the Eagles in 24, you said they need to get a playoff win.
But the Giants and Eagles have different expectations.
Yeah, but the Giants' expectations were lower.
Well, the Giants' expectations last year were they thought they were going to win a Super Bowl, and I'm like,
Oh
with
God!
what?
Anybody that thought that has their glasses aren't even.
You know
blue.
what?
They're
Giants
like
fans
painted their
didn't want
body
to.
blue.
Giants fans did not want to admit this last year, but it really bothered me with that organization. They were okay with losing 38-7 in a playoff game. That is never okay.
Oh,
I don't care
they
how
were
far
not.
you get.
They were not only happy. They misevaluated. They thought they were closer than they were.
They were never close.
No, they weren't. Well, remember the team they beat had Ed Donatel as the defensive coordinator.
But by the way, that's your boy, John, Mr. 4th and 26 at Donatel. Somehow that guy still got defensive coordinator jobs. John Desai can't get one anymore, but yeah, let's just bring back Ed Donatel.
Well, no, Ed, that season, I don't believe Ed's in the league anymore.
No, he's
that
not.
season was so bad. That's one of the worst defenses I've ever seen in my life, and that's a Vic Fangio defense. That's
That's why he's still around because he's a Vic Fangio guy.
Well, yeah, he's a big Vic guy. But he's not in the league anymore. It was so bad in 2022 that people are like, all right, we're going to pull the plug on poor old Ed. When that defense goes bad, it is ugly. It is ugly.
You know, the Vikings, the Vikings gave me a lot of love in the offseason last year because I said they had one of the top 5 moves of the offseason, and that was hiring Brian Flores.
Oh, I love Brian.
Yeah,
they went from the outhouse to the penthouse at defensive coordinator,
and they were
very similar
defense.
Yeah, because that was one of my predictions. I got right. I said because they were at the bottom with Ed Donatel. I don't think they were 32nd, but they were very much
close.
like the Eagles last year. 31st passing defense, I think 30th overall, maybe. And I guaranteed they'd be top half with Brian Flores. Just Brian, and they didn't have a ton of talent. Just Brian Flores. And they were. And I say the same thing about Vic this year with the Eagles. They don't have a ton of talent, but they're going to be top half of the league.
They're going to be better.
Yeah.
Jeff, what was the score of that playoff game you just said? That was unacceptable. 38-7?
38-7.
That the Giants lost that year?
That was the Giants.
The Eagles.
How about 32-9?
No,
that's unacceptable too. You know that. Yeah, you definitely know how I feel about that.
That's where I was going with it. That's unacceptable too.
That's
Jeff,
unacceptable. Losing 6 or 7 is unacceptable. Come on, Zander. You know me better.
I know that. All right. Jeff, thanks for joining the show, man. You give us extended time. We appreciate it as always. We appreciate it.
I gotta give you one more extended time because I gotta call out McMullen. John, how do you know where a certain spot is in Reading, by the way? You know where I'm going with this.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, I frequented that place in my younger days. So yeah, it's amazing. It's still around. They used to give out punch. They used to give out Terrell Lewis will know about that, but they used to give out punch cards. My little Terrell Lewis allude. So the 10th visit would be free.
John went 9 days in a row.
One of the few punch cards I actually was able to redeem back in the college days. Yeah.
Did you go
for people that know?
birthday?
There's a certain spot in Reading, Pennsylvania. Jeff was there. ostensibly attending a Reading Phillies game, but we know he was at a certain cabaret, shall we say.
Was Ed at that's cabaret too?
No, Ed had his wife out there. You didn't
I
tell
know.
me that. Yeah. Couldn't
I'm sitting with Ed.
couldn't veer off to Al's Diamond Cabaret. We'll give him a plug. There you go. Pre-plug.
I showed a couple people that text that Ed sent me, and yeah, a lot of us, they're like, of all the places, they have the Pagoda, they have all the food places, and that's where you mentioned.
Yeah.
I love it.
Best place in Reading.
Good stuff, Jeff Kerr. Thanks for coming on the show, man. We appreciate it.
Sounds great. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, bud.
Jeff Kerr joining us on Birds 365. Always does a great job. Always brings great conversation and does great work for CBS Sports. So make sure you guys follow Jeff on Twitter. Read his work at CBS. And in 3 weeks, look for that article, The Worst 5 Teams in the NFL. Where's my buddy James Jones? Is he in here? James Jones. Where's my guy? He is in here. Our resident Commander fan. James, you better be looking for that article to see if your Commanders are in the bottom. Jeff Kerr's bottom 5.
I would think the Giants would be in there before the Commanders.
I do too. I think the Commanders are going to be all right, actually. I told James that, and he paid $5 for me to give him a little hail to the Commanders or whatever the heck it was I did. Yeah. So we appreciate that. Let's get another commercial break. I got another good topic for Johnny Mack on the other side of the break. So we'll do that at the coming up. We got one more segment left on this Monday edition of Birds 365. If you're in here, and I appreciate everybody that's in here on this Monday, it's June, so I know we're in the low point of the year, 81 days till the Eagles kick off the season. But if you are in here, drop us a like. We appreciate it. Stay tuned. Birds 365 will be right back.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Heading down the shore. Have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wildwood days.
Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody. Birds 365, a Monday edition, June 17th here on Birds 365. Moving right along in the offseason, a little over a month out from training camp, about 5 weeks out from the Eagles training camp, and then 81 days, as I mentioned all over the show today, 81 days until that kickoff in Green Bay. Guys, it's getting close. I mean, that's less than 3 months. The last 80 days has gone by quick. I hope the next 80 will go by as quick. But as Johnny Mac mentioned, do enjoy your summer because it will be gone before we know it. Johnny Mac, I'm going to ask you what I asked Kerr. How good do the Eagles have to be this year for success? We've talked about it a little bit, but I want to dive deep into it here. How good do the Eagles have to be this year?
Very good. For most people, it's Super Bowl or bust. That's kind of the world we live in. That's unrealistic. I don't know how you change that, though. I mean, it's just become this thing of sort of the modern sports fan that everything's a failure. If you have those types of expectations and you don't win a Super Bowl, it's really hard to win a Super Bowl. Stars have to align, all that kind of thing. So, but yeah, this team, top 5 roster. A lot of people think it's one of the best in the NFL, 1 or 2. I saw, speaking of list season, I saw the 33rd team had them at number 2. I think that's a little bit high, but I think their starters are in that conversation. Yeah, if they don't win, certainly can't be one and done making the playoffs. So anything less than, I would say, in NFC Championship game would be deemed as insufficient, I would think, from most. I don't know if that's fair, but I think that's where we are with this team.
What's fair to you, John?
Fair to me is, look, if you win a playoff game, it's a successful season. Depending where you are, obviously it's a shifting landscape. If you're the number 1 seed going in the playoffs, you
Right.
you better go to at least the championship game. And as I said, even that'll be a disappointment. Now, if they make the playoffs as a wild card team, I would say they'd have to win that week, the Tampa Bay week, so to speak, and then at least be competitive in the divisional round. So it depends on sort of where you are. They should be in the conversation, but it's so important to get the number 1 seed. There's only one bye-week team, obviously, now with the 7 teams in the playoffs. So that means so much, and you're going to be fighting with Detroit. I think Detroit's the best team in the NFC on paper. You're going to be fighting with San Francisco again. You're going to be fighting maybe even Green Bay. I don't think Dallas will be in that realm. I think they have taken a little bit of a step back. I think they'll be a playoff team. But I think those are the 3 the 2 teams you'll be dealing with, I think, barring massive injuries, are Detroit and San Francisco, maybe Green Bay, which will be interesting because that's week 1. And you should be in that conversation. And look, we know the expectations. It's not a bad thing necessarily to have high expectations, but we saw last year they were a little bit unrealistic. They might be a little bit unrealistic again.
Yeah, to me, it's a lot of context, right? Where, I mean, we did our NFC top 7s last week, and our lists were somewhat different, but the only thing that wasn't different was that each of our top 3, they were different orders, but had the 3 teams, Lions, 49ers, Eagles. So to me, it's, you got to be on the brink, I would say, of getting to the NFC Championship game. Like, if you get there, to me, that would be a successful season. Not necessarily winning it, getting there. I'm an Eagle fan, so yes, I want to win the Super Bowl, but I'm trying to gauge the realistic expectations for the team along with what I want as a fan. If you lose a nail biter in the divisional, I'm okay with that too. If you lose in overtime to Detroit and they go to the championship game, that to me is the context I need. If you get blown out like they did last year and you look like you didn't even want to be there, that's where the context goes into this conversation big. But I will say, I think they're an undisputed top 3 roster, top 3 team in the NFC. You got to at least be contending like that. And if you're not, then I would say it's failed expectations. The one guy I really wonder of what he thinks is Jeffrey Lurie, because he's the only one that matters, right? I mean, what are Jeffrey Lurie's expectations? They've proven to be high. I mean, he's had high expectations in the past. You're not always going to live up to them, but Barb's telling me to raise the bar. Barb, if they get to an NFC title game, I'm pretty happy.
Well, that's what I mean. I think
I'm an Eagle fan too. I want them to win the Super Bowl.
I think Barb is most Eagles fans. I think you got to raise the bar. I don't know if that's fair. In fact, I would argue it's not fair, but that's the belief.
If you let's just say, for example, if you lose a nail biter in the end,
I would consider it successful.
Yeah, even if it's in the NFC title game, you're not going to walk away and be like, "What an unsuccessful year." You're going to be like,
I think a lot of people are. I think a lot of people look at this team and say it's the best team in football. And again, let's be honest, Philadelphia is very provincial. They're not looking at other teams. They're not paying attention to other teams. There's good teams out there. From their standpoint, the Eagles have the most talent. And if they don't win, it's going to be a disappointment. And if they don't win, by that I mean if they don't win a Super Bowl, it's going to be a disappointment. It's unrealistic. It's not fair. But that's where we are. It's Super Bowl or bust for this team. I mean, I tried to temper the expectations on Saquon Barkley as much as humanly possible. They're outrageous. The changing of the offense as a whole, the system is going to result in some growing pains. I think the defense is going to be much improved, and I think Bick's going to be a big part of that. But you do have some younger players you're projecting to lean on that are going to have some growing pains. So it's not going to be all peaches and cream, but in the off season, people think this team is great again. And if they're not great, it's going to be a disappointment.
Yeah, but I agree with that. Like I don't even have a problem with that, especially for Eagles fans. But you're not going to win the Super Bowl every year. I think every fan knows that. Anybody that's been a fan of this team is well aware you're not going to win the Super Bowl every year. So to have those,
should be
right. We have one of them in 57 years or whatever the heck it is. That's not a good percentage for anybody that's counting.
Doesn't stop it. Yeah, it was a disappointment. It was a disappointment when Doug and that group won the Super Bowl and the new normal didn't come into fruition. And they regressed back to being just a run-of-the-mill playoff team. It was not acceptable when they lost the Super Bowl to a dynasty-level team with a Hall of Fame coach and a Hall of Fame quarterback. It was not acceptable. Last year was obviously not acceptable. It's not going to be acceptable. Anything other than the Super Bowl is not going to be acceptable to a large portion of this fan base. Is it unrealistic? Yes. I said it's unrealistic. That's where they are. That's where they want to be too, by the way. They want to be regarded as that type of team. So I don't think they shy away from that.
Right.
But they understand.
Good for business.
Well, yeah, what the expectations are.
Yeah. What do you think? Where do you think Jeffrey Lurie lies? You think he's with the fans, or you think he's more understanding?
Well, I think he's more realistic. But
yeah, I do too.
I mean, yeah, his history is his history. I point out all the time. I mean, somebody's going to pay. Just the nature of the industry, and the Eagles aren't the only team that does that. In fact, they're like everybody else. If you don't reach your expectations, somebody's got to pay for that.
How about offense, John? Where are you at on the offense this year going into the year? And, you know, I think the offense is a different conversation than the defense. I really do. I know I'm not counting cap hits here because Howie does tremendous work, obviously, with that stuff. But on paper, the offense is $175 million. What do you
Yeah, I
think?
mean, I don't care about the money. The offense is very high ceiling offense, very high floor offense. In other words, they're going to be good. But I think they're going to be closer to their floor than their ceiling. I don't think it's the greatest show on turf. I don't think they're going to be scoring 40 a week. I think there's going to be some struggles, and I think they're going to be more like a number 8, like they were last year, offense than, the greatest offense of all time. But I
The
can't
tough part about
picture.
the offense is that everybody hated it or was mad at it at the end of last year, and they were 8th. So, like, that's where the conversation of expectations is tough there because
Yeah, but if
normally you're like 8th offense, that's pretty good. I mean, you're a top 8 offense in the league.
Yeah.
Last year it was 8 offense, and we were like, this is catastrophic. Fire
Yeah,
everybody.
well,
we're the worst team ever.
that's the unrealistic part. As long as the aesthetics are better, I think you'll be fine. Which are 8 is 8, you're right. But as long as the aesthetics are better and it looks better, and you maybe curtail some of the bubble screens, and maybe you throw a hot route on occasion, you throw some motion in there, you throw some bunch formations, and everybody thinks it's better, even if it's exactly the same. So I think from that standpoint, it'll be fine. And it'll be a good offense. Maybe it'll even be, I think the best case scenario is, have some of those struggles early and you start hitting your stride late, and then maybe you make the run to where you want to go.
Yep, Johnny Mac, let's move on. I want to bring up, we got about 15 minutes left in the show. Just to wrap up the expectations talk, I'd say John is pretty accurate there with what the expectations are and what they should be. And then the defense, everybody's just hoping Vic Fangio can make them viable, I guess you could say. Johnny Mac, I'm going to ask you to clarify your reference earlier about Terrell Lewis. A couple people in the chat are asking about it. They want us to hit on it. It's Eagle News. This is Birds 365. We want our fans to know everything about the Eagles, at least to our knowledge. What do we know about Terrell Lewis and what happened with him and that Eagle backup linebacker for the Eagles?
Well, we don't. There's allegations out there that Terrell was engaging in the services of an OnlyFans model, and the allegation is they ran out without paying. Now, hasn't been confirmed by anyone of note. I've tried to confirm it. You'll see it all over if you want to see it, and I wouldn't recommend it. It's all over social media, but for those who are really that interested, he wasn't going to make the team anyway. Obviously, this is not going to look good. It wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't even make it to training camp. But again, I don't want to say, because we live in this world where everybody's looking for attention. I don't want to say he's guilty of something because somebody framed it in the way they did. But either way, it's not a good look for an NFL player. So, and especially an NFL player on the bubble who's not expected to be a meaningful piece of the puzzle to begin with. So my assumption is the Eagles will move on. But yeah, I don't want to address it because there's so many things out there that people do for, look at me type situations, and we'll see how it shakes out. But the dead period and all that time, that's the worst thing that coaches always say. You don't want to see that phone call of somebody getting in trouble, getting arrested. That was not the case with Terrell. He didn't get arrested. He's not in trouble from a standpoint of legal issues. But there's some troubling allegations. And I think from the Eagles' standpoint, even more troubling is why would you put yourself in that position? So.
Exactly. It's more about the decision making and the headspace of the player than what the allegations are. Also, they're allegations, but there's not going to be any legal ramifications. Obviously not. So, whoever it is, the model or whatever you want to call her, she's making a big stink about it. It appears thing's got like 25 million views.
Yeah, well, exactly. And that's part of it too. And that's,
Well, yeah, it's a bad look. It's a bad PR look. Barstool Sports is writing articles about the Eagles taking off-season L's and, all that. So,
yeah. And, deep roster guy. It's probably not going to be worth it from the Eagles standpoint, but everybody's on vacation. So, we'll see how it shakes out.
Yeah, we'll see what it works. We got about 10 minutes left to play. Let's go to our buddy James Carver. Dropped us another super chat. James, appreciate you, brother. We appreciate it. $19.99. Thank you for dropping this in. J-Mac, I studied Eagles and slot wide receivers overall over the weekend, and it surprised me Smitty was top 5 in 22 and 15 in 23. AJ's production wasn't far off either. Have you looked into all that, and how does that affect wide receivers in 52 because some can't play outside?
I don't understand the end because some can't play outside. I mean, I'll just say it. AJ and Devontae, that's the luxury. They can play all three positions. I think a lot of people say AJ's an X and Devontae's a Z, and you need a flex receiver. The brilliance of those two guys is they can play all three positions, and not a lot of people can play all three positions, if that's what he was trying to get at. And those guys can move around, and you could use it, manipulate it in that direction. I always thought Devontae would be a tremendous slot receiver because he's such a good route runner. And he can gain separation pretty quickly. But at the same time, you don't want to necessarily waste him there. So I think the Eagles will use it as they have used it in certain situations to create matchups they want to get. But I think the mentality of X, Z, F is something that's a strength of the Eagles. Some teams have to use those demarcation lines because, a split end can't play flanker or can't work in the slot. And you have to have roles set up for everybody. That's the strength of having AJ Brown, Devontae Smith is they can play all three positions and they can play them well. And it's a big deal from the Eagles standpoint because it's easier to create those matchups you want. And in theory, which is funny because everybody says how stale they are. In theory, it should make you less predictable. But that's not always the case, as you saw last year with the Eagles, who are self-proclaimed predictable and stale last year.
Yeah, so we'll see how that obviously plays out with the Eagles. And it's something we've been talking about a lot this offseason. Johnny Mack has been beating the drum on it. They don't have any depth after AJ and Devontae.
No, it's ironic when you start looking at the 53, most people have them keeping 6 receivers, and they probably will keep 6 receivers. And, part of it is Britton Covey's a great punt returner, so he's going to be here. You do need, if you want to default to Paris Campbell, and then you have the 2 rookies, Anaya Smith and Johnny Wilson, and the default setting for Howie and every GM in the modern game is they want to keep their draft picks. So,
yep.
Do you want to waste 6 spots on that group? I would argue no, but they're not going to cut draft picks. Just the way of the world in the NFL these days.
Yeah, so we'll see how it shakes out. You think they're going to make a move there? You think they're going to add somebody?
I think they'll take it in the camp and see how it shakes out. similar to what they did last year at linebacker, and then they said, "Oh, we better go out and get Zach Cunningham and Miles Jack." It might be that type of situation. Um, I think they'll want to see Paris Campbell and John Ross early, and if they're not cutting it, then you might see them trying to make a move.
Outside or slot?
Yeah, I mean,
I feel like outside, just because they do have bodies that can play slot, whether they're great or not.
I would rather, like, Hunter Renfrow is a big name. Like, he's strictly a slot receiver.
Yeah, I don't.
I wouldn't bring him in from that standpoint. He's not gonna. I need somebody who can help outside as well. Now, as I just said, that's easier said than done. But I would go outside. Maybe that's why Devontae Parker was brought in originally before he retired, because AJ and Devontae can play in the slot. So you have a better equipped outside backup. Right now, your outside backup, if you're keeping those 6 guys, they probably just play Paris Campbell outside, but that's not going to work out well. And then it would be Johnny Wilson would be your top backup outside receiver, which that ain't great. Maybe it'll be great a year or two down the road, but it ain't great immediately. I will say that.
Yeah, James brings up a good point, and he followed up with you just about his last comment. So, yeah, it makes outside receivers more in demand, and we don't have great backups for several backups in the slot. I agree with that, James, for sure. So, we'll see what the Eagles do. There's still a lot of things to figure out going into training camp. There's a lot of ways that how he can play this offseason. I'm very curious. Obviously, one of the things we've talked about for anybody that's been tuning into Birds 365 has been the cornerback room, defensive backs really as a whole. So there's a lot of stuff on Howie's mind. I'm sure. I know he's on vacation, but I'm sure he's thinking about it all.
No, he's not. Yeah, he's thinking about it. He's not on vacation.
Yeah, he's sure he's not out there on Lurie's yacht.
Well, he was golfing. They had the golf thing. So
what they have this weekend?
Some kind of golf tournament. I don't even know, to tell you the truth.
I didn't see any of it. That's why I asked.
He was out there with Graham McDowell, and I don't know. One of those things. If I knew more information, I would tell you, but I don't know.
Rock, paper, scissors says, Zander, do you think Anais Smith could be starting wide receiver? Well, if I'm going off what I've heard from John about what he's done so far in the spring, I would say no to that.
I would say he's got to catch the football first.
Yeah, I would say let's catch the football.
Yeah, he didn't have a great spring, but he's coming off a stress fracture. I think he was amped up. Was out early in OTAs, still wasn't cleared. Was able to get on the field. A little bit later, I think he was a little bit too excited. A lot of Shelton Gibson vibes early, though. A lot of drops. Botched a couple punts as a punt returner. So he's just got to settle down. But yeah, I mean, we talked about with those day 3 picks. I mean, you remember after the draft how excited people were, Zander, about Anais Smith and Trevor Keegan, and who's the third one? Who am I missing?
Jeremiah Trotter Jr.
Yeah, sorry, Trot. Yeah, for obvious reasons. Those 3 5th-round picks, and you saw already nobody's talking about it anymore. No, Jeremiah Trout is not going to be a day 1 starter at the weakest position the Eagles have. Anais Smith is not going to be a day 1 starter. And Trevor Keegan is not going to be a day 1 starter. So that evaporated in the spring in pajamas. That's how clear it is. Not easy to be a day 3 pick. Not that it doesn't happen, and everybody will bring up Puka Nacua last year, but that die is already cast with those 3. Hopefully they'll develop. That's not to say they can't develop down the line, but yeah, it ain't happening year 1.
Yeah, so we'll see. And I for anybody that's tuning in, I do have some good topics that we're going to do because we do have an extended period of time here before the Eagles are back. So me and Johnny Mack are going to dive into the rookie class again. Kind of a couple it's a couple months removed now, which I like better, because when you're right after the draft, as John mentioned, everybody's like high on everybody, like they're going to be some major contributor. Now that the dust has settled, we've seen at least spring. We don't know much yet still, but at least we can, potentially portray where these guys might fall on the roster, where, who they're backing up and what that might look like. So we're going to do that with all of the rookies. So stay tuned for that. Johnny Mac and I will do that sometime in the coming weeks, maybe this week, depending on how the cookie crumbles. So thanks that. And James Carver, Johnny Mac, wants to thank you. He's a big contributor to our show, so we appreciate him very much. He wants to pass on his thanks to you because something you said last week made him study the Eagles receivers all week. He says your knowledge knows no bounds, and you forced him to study. So good stuff from James. James, thanks for being here. Thanks everybody for being here. JM, Mike, Kevin Savard, Twiz the Jigger. That's going to do it for this Monday edition. Johnny Mac, any final thoughts on this Monday edition? I thought we had a pretty good show today.
Yeah, I jumped the gun last week. I said today was going to be our 800th show. I was one off. Tomorrow's going to be 800th Bird 65. So I want to say thank you to all the listeners who've made that possible. And 80 days, perfect. 80 days away from the opener, 800 Birds 365 shows. That works.
Pretty incredible, Johnny Mac, right? I mean, when we started this show, I didn't know if we thought we would get to 800 or not, but here we are. It's pretty good stuff.
Yeah, a lot of shows. What are we? We're 4 years old.
Yeah, about 3.5 years old. Yep.
Yeah, and I think our success spawned a lot of other people saying, "Hey, maybe we can do it too."
Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. And we, none of it is possible without the guys in the chat. So that's why I know I tell you a lot. I ask you to like the show a lot. The show is free. It's the best thing you guys can do to help us grow. But the show is really made possible by all you guys who listen to it every day. Because me and John can cry and talk and bitch about the Eagles all we want. If nobody's listening, we're not here and the business isn't running. So we appreciate each and every one of you guys. You guys are really awesome, and I do appreciate all of your guys' chats and your comments. I go back and I read them. Even when I'm not on the show, I read them. I read them on the JAKIB channel and everything like that. So I do appreciate all you guys who contribute, and there's a lot of you who contribute a lot, and it almost feels like I know you guys based on how I read your comments. So I appreciate that very much. That's going to do it for Monday's edition of Birds 365. We will be back tomorrow. I think we'll have Bill Colarulo back, the married man who was
married Bill Colarulo. Maybe he's, we'll see if he's changed at all.
Fresh off Aruba, Johnny Mac. I hear Aruba might change a man. So we'll see. We'll see how Bill Colarulo is tomorrow. But Johnny Mac, good show. We'll catch you tomorrow. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks, J Mac.
Thanks, guys.
All right. See you guys tomorrow, everybody. Appreciate it.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.